Toolbox decks. You love them or you hate them. There's always that one card that just facilitates an entire strategy or an entire deck. You know, its ability or its attack is very strong, very generic, and loves to accelerate out energy. We've seen it before with stuff like Lugia Vstar having access to Archeops, which can accelerate out any 2 special energy from the deck. And when Lugia Vstar released, it had a lot of options at its disposal, including the amazing rare Pokemon, which were really bad until Lugia Vstar came out, and then they became incredibly good. Even after those cards rotated, the deck still saw a lot of play, just using, you know, different Pokemon at its disposal that it could easily fulfill energy requirements for, even if those energies were, you know, type energies, because we had stuff like Legacy Energy come out, which the deck instantly threw in so it could facilitate all these ridiculous cards, so on and so forth. We've even seen it recently with stuff like Joltik Box, able to accelerate out 4 energy from the deck, able to fulfill the costs of plenty of different Pokemon like Pikachu, Iron Hands, Iron Leaves, all those different types of Pokemon in that deck did see a pretty decent amount of success. And with the release of Destined Rivals, we've gotten another new Toolbox Pokemon. And it's all because of one Pokemon I honestly didn't really think would end up being a Toolbox Pokemon until I thought more about it, and then it's like, yeah, this card is kind of good. That card being Ethan's Ho-Oh EX. With its Golden Flame ability, once during your turn you may attach 2 basic fire energy cards from your hand to one of your benched Ethan's Pokemon, basically itself. And this attack is 4/5 for 160 damage, and then you heal 50 damage from each of your Pokemon. Don't knock this attack, it's pretty good, especially in a format with, you know, Monkey Dory around and stuff like Marnie's Grimmsnarl with Frostlass spreading around a bunch of damage. Just heal away all that damage, and then they just can't move it around. Now you may be thinking, it attaches to itself, how are you supposed to attach onto other Pokemon? Could use something like Energy Switch, but that only moves 1 energy. Well, there's a little card called Armarouge from Scarlet and Violet with its Fire Off ability. As often as you like during your turn, you may move a fire energy from one of your bench Pokemon to the active Pokemon. Unlike other fire moving abilities, it doesn't move to any Pokemon, it does have to be from bench to active. So if you want to put up a different attacker, you're gonna have to retreat and then move all the energy onto it. Now, you may be thinking, well, it's fire energy, so you know you can only facilitate fire attackers and all that kind of stuff. Actually, no, because if you read Armarouge, it says move a fire energy. It doesn't say basic fire energy, which means that you can use stuff like luminous energy, because luminous energy, as long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides every type of energy, but only provides one type of energy. And if the Pokemon has another special energy, it only provides colorless. So while it's attached to a Pokemon, it's basically treated as every energy. And with Armarouge, you can move it onto different Pokemon because it is considered a fire energy, not a basic fire energy, but it is considered a fire energy. Same thing with Legacy Energy, which basically says the same thing as luminous energy, but it also has the benefit of your opponent takes 1 fewer prize card when the Pokemon it's attached to is knocked out. So if you're attacking with something in the active and then, you know, your opponent brings up something else, you can just retreat out, move all of that energy from that Pokemon onto this new one and attack with that one. And because we play stuff like luminous energy, like Legacy Energy, we can fulfill a lot of different attack costs for a lot of different Pokemon to fulfill pretty much every single matchup there is. You obviously have the standard inclusions in this deck, Mew EX for a free retreat, Latias EX for kind of the same thing. Mew EX can also draw your cards, and its attack, Genome Hacking, can actually come up. Fizandipity to also draw your cards, but then we go on to the main attackers of the deck. Blood Moon Nurse Luna for the late game, Iron Hands EX, because Ampu very much is a lightning energy, so luminous energy or legacy energy can easily fulfill that, and then 3 fire energies you can attack with it. Wellspring Mask Ogerpon. Now this is probably the deck's main attacker, I would say. Sob for a colorless during your opponent's next turn, defending Pokemon can't retreat for 20 damage. Very strong, locking your opponent's Pokemon into the active, and if they don't have a switch or a way to get it out, then it's just going to stick there. But we also have Torrential Pump for 1 water and 2 colorless, 100 damage, and then you can shuffle 3 energy attached to this Pokemon into the deck, and if you do, it does 120 damage to a benched Pokemon. So you can very easily just use Ho-Oh's ability, attach 2 energy to itself, evolve into an Armarouge, attach a Luminous or Legacy energy onto this Pokemon, use Armarouge to move it onto this Pokemon, and attack. And plus, you can shuffle the 3 energies back into the deck, so you don't lose Luminous energy or Legacy energy, so then you can get them later on in the game. Very, very strong Pokemon. Plus, if you're up against Fire deck, then you obviously have the type advantage. That's another thing about this deck. It can play almost every type as long as it has one of the energy type requirement for its attack. If it has any more, it's going to be a little bit tricky because luminous energy counts as a colorless if you have multiple special energies. Monkey Dory can be thrown into the deck because of luminous energy, obviously. Terrapagos, Unified Beatdown, because we do play Area 0 Underdepths, because we play these Terra and Stellar type Pokemon, so we can very easily fill up our bench space with a lot of Pokemon to fulfill multiple different uses. Unified Beatdown, 30 damage, and then 30 more damage for each of your benched Pokemon. Regigigas with Jewel Breaker, 100 damage, and if the active Pokemon is a Terra Pokemon, 230 more damage, can easily one-hit KO any Terra Pokemon in the game. Durant EX. This is basically a counter for Dark decks, and it's also kind of an end game attacker. Its attack, Vengeful Crush, does 120 damage for a grass and 2 colorless, and then it does 30 more damage for each prize card your opponent has taken. Decently strong against, grass weak Pokemon, and also is a pretty decent end game attacker, because if your opponent's taken something like 4 prize cards, that's plus 120 damage for 240, pretty strong. They've taken 5, then it's additional 150, and if it's weak, again, against grass, you double that damage. Plus, its ability is also pretty decent, Sudden Shearing. When you place Pokemon from your hand onto your bench, you can discard the top card of your opponent's deck, possibly getting rid of a very vital resource if you maybe know what the top card is, or if you're into the late game, it could, mill your opponent out. Very, very strong. Lily's Clefairy EX, not only good against anything that's psychic weak, but it can also force all of your psychic Pokemon to have ×2 weakness against dragon Pokemon. Full Moon Rondo, we play Area 0 Underdepths, so we can easily fulfill that, and stuff like Squawkabilly EX to discard our hand, because we actually do want to go first with this deck, because we want to get Charcadet established so we can evolve it into Armarouge, so on and so forth. And other than that, the deck just plays a lot of cards to get Pokemon out of the deck, and a lot of draw support like Professor's Research, Iono, Carmine, which we can use on our first turn to discard our hand, Bossor to bring up anything we need, of course Area 0 Underdepth so we can build up our bench, Jamming Tower to stop any tool cards our opponent may be using, and then Energies is just Fire, Luminous, and of course Legacy Energy for our Ace spec, which basically makes all of our main attackers 1 prizes, and in the case of Regigigas, makes it give out 0 prize cards. In terms of this deck's representation currently and how it's doing, at NAIC it got 56 and 319th, that's all I'm seeing on Limitless, but over in Japan, the deck is actually doing pretty well. Currently on the tier list, it is at the bottom of B tier with a 2% representation. Japan is currently in Black Bolt and White Flare format, so everything's a little bit different over there, but this deck actually gets a little bit stronger with Black Bolt and White Flare because we have Reshiram EX. Reshiram EX has the Blaze Burst for 130 damage for 2 fire and a colorless, and this attack does 50 more damage for each prize card your opponent has taken, but you have to discard an energy from this Pokemon. It's basically your end game attacker if you're pretty behind on the game, because if your opponent's taken 4 prize cards, that's plus 200 damage for 330 damage. Very, very strong card, and plus we're a fire based deck, we play fire energy as our main basic energy, so the attack is very, very easy to fulfill. But the deck kind of does have its issues because your main wave accelerating energy into play is only with Ho-Oh, and you also have to have Armarouge in play, so if your opponent knocks out Armarouge, they're going to have to get another one established if they want to start moving around energies again. So that's pretty much your main target for this deck, because once that Armarouge is knocked out, your opponent's going to have a pretty tough time, especially if they have a Pokemon in the active that they don't really want to be attacking with. Plus, everything in this deck is pretty low HP, to be honest, though you do have stuff like Legacy Energy to reduce the amount of prize cards your opponent has taken. Everything in this deck can still be very easily one-hit KO'd by most stuff in the format. Yes, you do have a counter towards almost everything, but if your main engine gets knocked out, Armarouge and Ho-Oh, the deck kind of falls apart, and you need to get those cards back into play as quickly as you can, because if you can't, then your opponent's easily just going to sweep away the game. The deck does have its strengths by being able to use so many different Pokemon, but it also does suffer from the same type of weaknesses as other Toolbox decks. For example, stuff like Joltik Box, once they've powered up that one Iron Hands and starts attacking with it, if you can knock it out, they're going to struggle to get another one powered up. Basically, start of the game, it's really good, really aggressive, can get stuff powered up, but towards the later half of the game, once you've taken, some prizes, knocked out some Pokemon, it starts to slow down tremendously. I guess the same thing can be said with Lugia Vstar, especially because special energies, I don't think there was any way to recover them back, so once those Pokemon were gone, those special energies were gone for good. You obviously do play stuff like, Super Rod, Energy Retrieval, Night Stretcher, those types of things, but the deck is still very vulnerable, especially in the late game once you start KOing those main Pokemon like Ho-Oh, like Armarouge, because your opponent's going to have to spend resources to get them back, and in the case of Armarouge, they're going to have to bench Charcadet and then evolve it again, and you can very easily just target down the Charcadet again and knock it out, denying your opponent from building it up. Plus, it's the case of Armarouge is an evolution Pokemon, whereas we have some other cards and some other decks in the format that can just use like item cards or other basic Pokemon to move stuff around. Like Joltik, it was just, a basic Pokemon, so you just attach energy onto it and accelerate out 4 energy from the deck. The deck does have its strengths, but it also does have some pretty glaring weaknesses. However, going into the future with the mega sets, it could potentially see a lot more play, especially if we get some really good like Toolbox mega Pokemon that have really good attacks that only need like one of a specific type of energy. At the moment, I don't think we do have any. We have Latias EX, but that requires a fire and a psychic, as well as a colorless, so I don't think that'll see play in the deck. We're going into a format full of free prize Pokemon. That's if any of these mega Pokemon start seeing play. The deck could be pretty good, and again, if we get any more basic mega Pokemon that have pretty good attacks that only require one of a certain type of energy, the deck could splash those in and see some decent success with them. Again, the deck has its strengths, but it also does have its pretty glaring weaknesses, especially considering 2 of its main Pokemon. Once those are gone, then the deck kind of just falls apart and has to spend time recovering those resources back into the game. But I expect the deck to maybe see more play and more success as we go on and people start experimenting more with it. Maybe when Black Bolt and White Flare comes out and we get some more stuff like Reshiram EX, the deck can start seeing more success and more play in the format. And that's kind of it for this video. Not really much else to talk about. It's a toolbox deck. It has 2 main Pokemon and then you just throw in out whatever else you need to facilitate what is currently good in the meta and have those counters towards meta decks. The deck is doing good. It's seen success in the West and in Japan, and going into the Mega Evolution format, it might see more success, or there is the possibility it could fall off. We never know. We'll just have to wait and see. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, what you think about Ho-Oh Armarouge Box, whichever one you want to call it. Ho-Oh Box, Armarouge Box, whichever one you want to call it. Have you picked up this deck? Have you been playing this deck? I've seen it quite a lot on TCG Live, and it is a pretty annoying deck to deal with, especially that Wellspring Mascogapon, because I'm playing Ethan's Typhlosion. Do you think this deck will have its longevity into the Mega Evolution format? Do you think there will be some Pokemon coming out that it could facilitate, because there are quite a lot of basic Mega Pokemon that could come out? Evolution Mega Pokemon are stage 2s, and the Mega Pokemon that evolve from a non-evolution are now basics, so there is the possibility that it could get more support and more powerful attackers in the future. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all of that nonsense, and I will see you in the next video, whatever that may be. Take care.